I'd like to give some follow-up comments on the new hospital. We've been monitoring the letters to the editors, Facebook, and also comments from the public in general. And I think there's some points that make sense to further clarify. Regarding the due diligence process in terms of how the bidders were selected, I think it's important to remember or to go over how the process was actually executed. Originally, we went out and asked companies who would be interested in participating in the project to express interest, and in that stage we received letters of interest from 12 different companies, at which point a due diligence process, a review process of those bidders was executed. In that process, we worked together with Royal Haskoning and ICE, and Royal Haskoning is one of the largest and most experienced hospital engineers in the Netherlands, and they assisted in the pre-selection process to help us to determine that the companies actually were qualified in order to submit and execute the project. In addition to that, each of the companies was asked to present financial statements that had been audited, as well as reference projects that they have done, so that we could see that they've done comparable projects, and again, just to demonstrate that they had the capacity to actually execute, as well as an overview of their company structure, so that, again, we could see that they have the capacity from an organizational perspective as well. So the point is to emphasize that all of the bidders who were invited to tender, and obviously the company that we're now pursuing contract negotiations with, are qualified bidders from the get-go. Otherwise, we wouldn't have asked them to invest their time and energy in terms of making the proposal for the project. Another point that's been brought up is about the price difference, and actually even today there was an editorial article that refers to it, I believe. So there is a wide spread in the prices, and I think what it's done is sort of generated some concerns like, just because it's the low price, will you actually be able to execute for that price, etc. And I think it's important to understand that what we've asked the companies to bid. We've asked them for a design, engineer, build, and maintain contract. So let's put this into an analogy. If for example, if government was interested in purchasing new vehicles, if government goes out and says, look, I'd like to buy a Toyota Corolla or a RAV4, four-wheel drive, etc., give all the specifications, you would expect the prices to be a fairly narrow price range, right? Or, to give an example of a house, for example, if you've got your engineering drawings, your plans, your architectural plans, and you go out, you look for a contractor, you would expect that the prices should be within a fairly narrow range. To go back to the analogy for the car or for the house, what we've done is said, we are looking for an SUV, we're looking for, let's say, a V6 engine, and a certain capacity to carry passengers. We haven't specified all of the details. So in other words, you could get, we've specified functional details, but not that we want a Toyota or a Rolls-Royce or a Mercedes-Benz. We've given functional requirements as to what we're looking for. The same thing as a house. If you said that we're looking for a moderate four-bedroom house with a living room, eat-in kitchen, etc., we've given specifications in terms of how we would like the hospital to be used, what types of functional requirements we're expecting. So what that does is it leaves the bidders the possibilities to come with a wide range. Back to the car analogy, you could get anything from a Toyota RAV4 to a Range Rover, for example, and that would explain the range of prices that you could offer, because we specified what the needs of the hospital are, not down to we want this kind of a door or these kinds of sinks or this kind of equipment. We specified the functionality that we're looking for. So that helps to give some explanation as to why you might get a wide range of prices, and one of the prices, which was quite high, the company offered an excellent proposal, but it was what we would consider to be, let's say, a more luxurious proposal, or a proposal that let's say, over-satisfied some of the requirements, and that translates into a higher price, which is obviously an issue for the country. The other point is that, together with Royal Haskoning, an estimated budget was made before the bidding process began. So it isn't as if we didn't have any idea what the hospital should cost. There were already estimates made before the project, before the tendering process, and so there were already estimates as to a range in terms of where the price for the hospital should be, and the price with INSO, the company that we're negotiating with, their price falls within the range that we had estimated the project should be. So it's not as if this is a price that's way lower than we had estimated, and therefore generate questions as to whether they'd actually be able to deliver for that. The other thing is, keep in mind, this is a project that has certain amounts of unknowns. And so when people price risk, different companies put a different value to risk. And so there's a number of elements in the project that could translate into why the difference in the price. And also, like I said, the functional requirements, it's very well possible that people interpret them in different ways. And then that would raise the question of how are we sure, how do we get the guarantee that they're actually going to finish the project, that they're going to perform the work within the budget that they've promised to work within, whatever that final price is based on our contract negotiations. So there's a couple things that we've included in the process. Number one is that we need a guarantee, or as part of the process, a guarantee from the parent company needs to be issued. As some of us know, sometimes for projects they might set up a special company, a local NV, and if something happens to that NV, all of a sudden it turns out it's a shell company and there's no real assets in it. Our requirement as part of the project is that we have the backing of the parent company, not only a local entity that might be established for the construction project. And the other point is the contract is based on what's called the FIDIC Gold. That's F-I-D-I-C, Gold. And in there's a 10% performance guarantee that's required, and that has to be backed up by a bank. So there's a performance bond that needs to be issued as part of the project. Another question then that's come up is, how do we know they're not going to cut corners on the quality? How do we know that the quality of the project is going to be maintained? And again, that's why, if you look at what we've asked for, included in the proposal is also a maintenance contract for a 10 plus 10 period. In other words, there's a maintenance contract for 10 years with an option to extend it for another 10 years. Again, and this is backed up by another performance bond, so another bank guarantee on their maintenance contract. So what does this mean? What does this translate into? Is if the contractor decides that they're going to cut corners during the construction process, the repairs for those problems are going to become their problems anyways. So what it does is it creates the incentive for them to do the job well in the first place, because in the end they're going to have to fix what doesn't work well. The other thing is, by the way the contract's been set up with this functional requirements. So, for example, each of the rooms is required to be able to cool to a certain temperature, to a certain degree. We haven't specified the air conditioning equipment. In other words, it's not like we've gone out and said, you need to buy a 3-ton air conditioner for this function. No. We've specified the functional requirements, which means each of the rooms must be able to cool to a certain temperature. If, during the operational period, the rooms cannot cool to the temperature that they need to, there's no discussion about, well, you told me to put in this kind of AC. No, we only told you the functional requirements. It's up to you to make sure that you deliver. So again, as part of that maintenance, if you can't deliver, that becomes your issue. So we can hold them to that functional requirement. In addition to that, Royal Haskoning and ICE are going to continue to work throughout the balance of the project, monitoring both costs and quality. And in addition to that, the tripartite will still hire an independent technical supervisor to again oversee the project to make sure that the quality standards are properly maintained.
The terms of reference for this contract, is it to your satisfaction?
The terms of reference, the bidding documents you're talking about?
Yes.
I believe that they were very thoroughly done, very professionally done. It is literally a book, you know, about 3-4 inches thick. I think that there's always still going to be some room for interpretation and discussions, and those are things that we need to make provisions for. But again, I think the contract price is a fixed price, so there may be discussions in terms of, as the project continues, how the specifics of those are executed, but I think the terms of reference are very well done and gives a solid base for the project.
Let me ask you this, and this is an outright question. Was there anyone within politics or anyone that is close to government that had any contact with these contractors that submitted a bid? Were they influenced by anyone? Did they know what the government projection was? Or was this just totally a bid put out, a bid, and a selection was made based on government price range? What I'm asking you is, was there anyone within the political arena, left, right, or center, that was in touch with any of the contractors that knew what government price range was?
To my knowledge, no. Absolutely not. And again, Bibi, you need to look at how the process was done. To make it a more transparent and a project with more integrity, I couldn't figure out how to make it more stringent, in other words, right? So even, let's assume that somebody actually knew the price that we were talking about as a range for what the hospital costs could be. You still couldn't know what the other contractors would bid. So even if somebody had an idea, it wouldn't give them any possibilities for collusion. There would be no advantage to it, if you follow what I mean. So the process really was designed to make it so that there was no way to tamper with the process. That's the way we tried to engineer the process, to make sure that it was impossible for anybody to tamper with it.
Thank you for the clarity. I'll come back to you on another question on the hospital later, but I want to touch on the Minister of Finance. Minister Gibson, we're in August. It's August 10th, next month, September. The budget of 2017. Where are we on this, and how close are we to having a balanced budget for the year 2017?
Well, we're working very hard on it. Our aim is to, for the first time, be on time with the budget 2017, and of course, that it is balanced. Everybody's scrambling at the moment with the various elements that have to appear in the budget and that meets the requirements of the law. It has been a struggle economically, not only here, but worldwide. Things have not been as we had expected them to be. If I take the United States of America, where initially, beginning of this year, there was an expectation of an economic growth of 3.5%, which was reduced later on by the pundits or by the experts to 2.5%. And now, lately, today, you hear that it's going to be, their projection for GDP growth this year will be a meager 1%. In that kind of environment, and it concerns matters that we do not control, but it does translate into people having disposable income, curtailing on travel plans, And basically, the only product that we sell is tourist services. So you get that being somewhat under pressure. Nevertheless, we are still very hopeful that our balanced budget can be produced for 2017, and that the projections that we have for 2016 will also end up balanced.
Thank you very much.
Finance Minister, I believe last week you spoke about a letter being sent to the Finance Minister of Curacao about the assets, division of assets. Can you say what has happened since?
The letter was not sent by the Dutch government. I've been in contact with them as a reminder. They promised that they would, but I have not left it there. And I informed the Council of Ministers yesterday that I'm going to make arrangements to fly down to Curacao today, if I can get a seat on Insulair. Today, I already contacted the Minister of Finance of Curacao to let him know that I want to come down for a meeting with him to discuss this issue as well as several other issues. I'll be gone for less than 24 hours because my plan is to go down today, have dinner with him tonight, discuss all the issues, and fly back tomorrow morning. So I'm not only waiting on that letter, I'm also taking additional steps to try to get this accelerated. Bear in mind, this payment is due by December 31st. It's not due now. I have until December 31st to collect this money to make certain the 2016 budget, as we have projected, remain balanced. So all efforts are being taken on my part to make certain that the division of assets of the Netherlands Antilles and our part of it, that presently our share is in the hands of Curacao, that be paid out before the end of this year. So it's from various angles I'm approaching this situation to make certain that we get our due.
You just spoke about the budget and how difficult a task it is to ensure that it's balanced, and the prevailing global conditions also doesn't bode well for what the income will be next year. So then should we expect, or are you already anticipating that the budget amount will be lower, the total budget amount will be lower, or would it be the same as the current budget?
I'm very hopeful, and that is what I'm targeting, to make certain that it's at least the same as it was for 2016. Not only that, there are certain measures that have been taken that would result in an increase of those revenues that we have projected for 2016, so that we have some margin in the budget 2017 to do some things additionally. My aim is, and I want to stress, my aim is specifically to make certain that in 2017 we do not have to cut any subsidies to social organizations, but that they get the amount that we were forced to cut in 2016 to balance the budget, and that does not repeat itself in the budget for 2017. And if I have my way, I think we will succeed in getting that done.
You mentioned just now certain measures were taken. Can you give us some idea of some of those measures and how they have panned out for government?
Right. There are certain areas or certain steps that have been taken to increase 2017. As you know, one of them is the indexation of casino fees. That's in the pipeline. That's going to generate additional income. There are also certain possibilities. Let me specifically say, for instance, SMMC owes a substantial amount in taxes that they're unable to pay. I'm hopeful we're going to be able to collect those taxes with the establishment of the new hospital that's going to include the sale of the land and buildings from SMMC in the financing structure that is being used, that will result in a substantial payment being made to SMMC, and from that payment, the taxes owed by SMMC can be paid to government. Just as an example of one of the approaches we've taken to make certain that we can collect additional income.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alito. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable William Marlin. At this time, we go over to the second round of questions. Bibi, do you have any questions in this round?
Certainly. Minister Lee, I read somewhere about the hospital built in St. Lucia, apparently by the same company. And people, based on what I read, are trying to speculate or thinking that, okay, the same company built the hospital in St. Lucia, which is not usable. I think last week or the week before you mentioned this about the hospital in St. Lucia and what's the hiccup there. But can you verify a little bit exactly if this is the company that built a hospital in St. Lucia and what is St. Lucia's problem?
This is a comment that I've heard. As a matter of fact, the Prime Minister in St. Lucia is a friend of mine. He, Prime Minister Alan Chastanet, also comes from a tourism background. So I took the opportunity to contact the Prime Minister to speak to him about the hospital in St. Lucia. As a matter of fact, if I have the opportunity to go and to actually see the facility myself, I would do that, just again to give further insights into how to negotiate our contract. But in my conversations with the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, his indication was that the hospital was built to very high specifications, to European specifications, and that the equipment was of a technical level that actually they have a problem that their staff is not has not been properly trained to use the equipment, and that the main reason the hospital is not functional has nothing to do with the contractor, but has to do with the fact that the specifications of the equipment are of such a level that they have a problem with the staff to actually equip to run the hospital.
I'll leave that there. I go to another topic. Yesterday, and I know you're the Minister of Labor, and not only yesterday, but quite constantly, there are a number of OPCs, people all over the island, as much as now in Colway Hill, and I would say harassing tourists. Have you, as Minister of Labor, have any concerns about this? Did anything about this? At least ask the police or somebody to say, well, listen, these people are not working here legally. They're harassing the people that come here to pump money in our economy. Was there anything done? Do you have any concerns about the active OPCs on the island, both on Front Street and now in Coal Bay?
Of course. Compliance is one of the points that we've been focusing on. The office is almost ready with a compliance guide, which is a guide for both employers and employees. This is across the different ministries. We've cooperated together to put together a guide to inform employers and employees as to what the laws are and what's expected of them, for sure. And I think many of the OPCs actually are French residents, or they live on the French side and working. Sorry?
European.
Okay, yeah, but residents on the French side. And as a matter of fact, this has been one of the discussion points with the French side in terms of, is there room for us to cooperate to make sure that some exchange of information, because some of these same people actually are collecting social premiums and benefits on the French side and then working under the table or under the radar on the Dutch side. So that's something that the French government also has an interest in. But in general, compliance is an issue. The labor inspectors are out on a regular basis. But these are people that are hard to find. I mean, you know that, because they dress as average tourists, and when they see officials come around, you know, they don't have uniforms or shirts or anything like that, right? They look like tourists, and when they see officials come around, they disappear. They blend into the woodwork. So, but it is a concern, and the harassment of tourists, and this is a complaint I've heard on Front Street as well about some of the stores that have very aggressive sales techniques where they're harassing tourists that are walking by. And that's something that's also been pointed out to the inspectorate. So anything that takes away from people's ability to walk unharassed, you know, and to enjoy their private time on the streets is something that has a concern of ours. And also the people working illegally and not contributing to our tax structure is obviously a major issue.